All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World Live podcast. I mean, I feel like I'm really stepping up my game a little bit. I got music playing in the background. I can kind of like fade it out, I'm just getting too good at this whole live podcasting, I think. Mario, what's happening, my friend?
How you doing, Mike? I'm doing well.
I want to introduce you formally in just a second, but before I do that, I do want to welcome everyone that's listening live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Welcome. As you know, we love to, or I love to, bring on industry experts and really just kind of talk shop and see what's going on in the industry, what's happening. And I've got a great guest today with Mario Lupia here today. But before we sort of get started with Mario, I do want to remind you to participate. I mean, it makes it a lot more fun for me and then the guests when you guys chime in and ask questions and all that good stuff. So all you gotta do is write a comment there and on LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll see it. And you can just say hello. You can ask some questions as we sort of get into the conversation, and that would be really, really awesome. But yeah, definitely participate. And thank you for listening in. So, okay, without further ado, I've got my friend Mario Lupia, who's been in this industry for a long time. I'm not going to say what year, but it goes, dawn of the internet, right?
Close.
I mean, what you and you're in Jersey, right?
Yeah, yep.
And you've been there your whole life, right?
I started out in, as most people in Jersey do, started out in New York, Staten Island, and now I'm in Jersey. Yes.
Okay.
But East Coast guy.
And you're East Coaster till the day you die. Yeah, and went to St. John's, in fact, as well.
I did.
And how the heck were you intending to get into like the digital marketing or the marketing industry out of college? I'm just curious. Going back to those days, was that first job something you kind of just fell into, or?
So let's be clear.
Yeah.
So when I got out of college, there was no such thing as digital marketing. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
But no, it absolutely was not. I went the route looking for jobs. There was a job for a direct marketing company. I think I was intrigued. There was New York City. It was on the 51st floor overlooking, the Hudson. And, I fell in love more with the office than the job. When people said, and they basically were a direct marketing company that did offline lead generation. And back in the day, that's the way it started. It was direct mail. It was business reply cards. I know most people out there right now are saying, what the heck are you talking about? But that's how I started. And, when people said, what do you do for a living? I couldn't even explain it, so, but, that quickly transformed. So, offline lead generation was how I started. And it really came full circle for me over the years. I just, transitioned into, worked in that space and worked in with data companies, worked with DoubleClick, and then was fortunate enough, back in early 2000s to join a great company. If people remember, it was the College Bound Network. And, it was an offline publishing company. Again, we weren't in the digital marketing space, but it was the time when digital marketing was evolving. And, one thing led to another, and we were able to get in, be a pioneer in the education lead gen space. And that's kind of where I started. And that's what took me down this course and to this, great industry of digital marketing and lead generation.
So just taking back a step there, College Bound, you mentioned that you guys weren't initially online. What were they doing?
So, College Bound was a traditional offline media company. Basically, it was a magazine. It was College Bound magazine. It was actually a magazine was delivered to high schools throughout the country, and guidance counselors would distribute it to juniors and seniors getting ready to go to college. We had a trade show event. We had some direct mail products, but lead generation was and digital marketing was not the intent of, Luciano, the owner, is, player fluent now, but yeah, that was not really the direction of the company until it transformed into this.
What was so was a monetization strategy for those print? Was it just paid advertising in those print items? Is that how that was the monetization strategy was for College Bound at that time?
Yeah, it was just paid ads, right, in the
Yeah.
magazines. It was paid ads in magazines. At the time, there were a couple of for-profit education schools, University of Phoenix, and a couple of others that were advertisers in the magazine. And as the story goes, they brought this concept to the College Bound team that this lead generation or this digital marketing was a new form of advertising that they were getting involved with, and did we want to participate? And if you remember, the sister company to College Bound was Classes USA, which really evolved. And Classes USA took the lead on it, and College Bound got involved in it as well. And then, we just refocused. I mean, literally, that's when I came aboard. Is the company did a 360-degree turn into this lead generation digital space. We dissolved really pretty much all our offline operations and refocused the company into lead generation. So, at the time it was a big gamble, right? Because it was something new,
Yeah.
it was something brand new. We had a great group of guys who are all veterans in the industry today. All own their own companies. Good friend of yours, Sean McGee, right? Joe Menino, all people that were early on. We just really took a gamble, and it paid off for us. So.
Yeah, tell me. So when you joined College Bound, were they in the midst of that transition already from print to digital, or was that something that was already sort of just starting to take place at the digital side when you joined?
It really wasn't. There was conversations about it. It was really
Yeah.
Classic USA that was taking the lead on that. We were still in the offline space.
Yeah.
And then when we started getting involved with it, and my role coming in really was to build marketing partnerships, and what we know of today is affiliates. So again, knew nothing about that. It was brand new concept, but that kind of was my initial role, was to come in and try to build affiliate partnerships for that model.
Yeah. So this is an interesting conversation. I want to sort of dive into just a little bit, and because there are companies out there even today that are potentially thinking about buying leads or getting into the sort of the quote unquote lead generation industry, and have typically stayed away from it for whatever reason, or done traditional marketing. So I'm curious to ask you just a few questions before we move on. When you guys, it's a different language. Do you know what I mean? Like, you guys are going from print to digital, and I'm certain that learning curve was probably crazy, going from, okay, we know this, how do we, dive in and learn all that we know here to make this work? So, looking back, first, was there like, an initial strategy, or, okay, who was the one leading the charge? Was it Luciano going, okay, finding out everything they know about that business model, that lead gen business model, and how to go about doing it? Was it about hiring people that sort of came from some other place that brought in the information? Just early on, what was that, those first number of months of figuring out, how do we do this? What was that like?
It was very unplanned. It was, so the unique part about it, which so there's a really pretty cool story, and really how Luciano really had the vision and focus, because it really was unique for us as a team. So Classes USA at the time, remember, they were acquired. They were part of a bigger roll up by Experian, I believe, who wanted to be this lead gen powerhouse, and went out and bought a few companies, right, the best of the best, and kind of wanted to put them all together. So when that happened, and Jordan Keltz and his team went on the other side, Luciano had certain restrictions, right, non-competes of what he could do from an advertising. So Class USA did the traditional digital route, right? They were a big MSN partner. They were a huge AOL partner. Did a lot of banner advertising. You know, that was the early days of, right, digital marketing. That's the way everyone kind of got involved. And then when we started getting into it, we didn't have that ability, right, because of certain non-compete. So we couldn't do digital advertising. We couldn't do those AOL partnerships. So we sat down as a team and said, what do we do? And you know, team came up with search engine marketing, right, which at the time, again, was relatively new industry. We self-taught ourselves pretty much everything. We sat down, we learned about it. There weren't many tools in the industry as they are today. So, you know, our keyword, building our keyword advertising and building our keyword lists literally was us going home at night as a team. And by the way, we started out as a 5-member team. So there were 5 of us that would literally go home at night and think up keywords or keyword phrases that we'd go out and purchase. And back then, most of our business was through keyword advertising. But I think the big transition for us, and really what made College Bound the company it was, and the growth and the success we had, was we had a tremendous amount of leads that were piling up that we could not deliver to our partner schools for various reasons. Students weren't of age yet. They were out of the geo zone. Schools were capping out how many leads they can take, and these started piling up. And we said, how can we kind of repurpose them and recirculate them? And you know, one of our team members, part of the team said, what about if we wait and call on these students at a future point of time? And we literally got a small team of people together, literally relatives and sisters and cousins and aunts of our team. We put them in a room, and you know, we had 4 or 5 people at the time, and we started making these calls to these people, and we had very quick success that we were converting leads that were sitting dormant. Now that became leads we can pass on to the schools. And for us, that just created a new world for us, which we know about today is pay-per-call, and Contact.io, which is coming around, is all about that. But you know, we definitely were an early pioneer, definitely in the call center and the pay-per-call space.
Yeah, that's so funny seeing that, because and sort of full circle on how those were the sort of and those years. I'm guessing, you know, maybe 2007, 8, 9, I guess maybe that was when calls were really becoming a thing. You know, transfers, calling and transferring those individuals in, and to see what it's really come into now, which I think, you know, whether it's pay-per-call or hot transfers, whatever, it may be bigger than, you know, data leads for a host of different reasons. But you guys sort of found that niche, and probably the schools loved it because they're not having to make those outbound calls, which were probably quite difficult for them at the time, and probably now too. You know,
they were, you know, people like University of Phoenix, which was a pioneer in that space as well, probably one of our largest partners at the beginning. Not only loved that we were sending them qualified leads that their admissions team can turn around and call within a matter of minutes, but we also did call transfers. So we had live transfers going in to the admissions team. And yeah, it was just it was so great, Mike, that we literally, as I said, you know, we went from a team of 8 to, at our height, we had just under 1,000 agents. We had about 350 seats. We had 4 locations throughout the United States. And by the way, this was not sending it out to offshore companies or partners. This was literally 100% all internal. It was our companies, it was our systems, it was our call centers, our employees. So it was amazing when you think about it today that, you know, you had such a big business, especially in an industry that's kind of changed dramatically back then. So it's a testament to our industry, how it just constantly changes, constantly evolves, and it's really come a long way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so you went from, you know, the director of affiliate marketing partnerships at College Bound to the vice president of operations as you guys went from 5 to, you know, X. 100 plus, which I gotta imagine, without the right leadership and all that sort of, and the know-how, there's a lot of challenges with that scale. Managing, gosh, you name it, everything from A to Z has got to be a challenge when you're scaling like that, especially from demand.
Mhm.
So did it feel like you were trying to catch up, or was it something that was more methodical?
So it was. So I guess the great part about the team and kind of again, testament to Luciano he did not take on the approach that as the owner or CEO that he kind of had to do everything.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to have a core team of 5 other people that became people I worked with that became best friends to today. But the 5 of us had to figure out how do we run everything. So we all kind of divvied up multiple hats. Who took on sales? Who took on the search engine and the marketing part of it? And I kind of drew the short straw to get involved in the operations, which other than booking my family vacations, every
Yeah.
year it was I always say I'm the CEO of my home, so that's all I knew about I didn't even know it was a job, to be honest with you. So I kind of took on the operational part, project managing some of the projects, and it was again it really was. I wasn't reading any books. I didn't have any mentors in that area. I was just kind of working as a team, figuring out what needs to be done, and everyone taking on those responsibilities. And again, as I said, for myself, it became the operational part of it. And fortunately, it was something that I fell into, and and it was I was very comfortable in that role. And we just continued to grow. And I think the key for me was to from an operations perspective was not necessarily delegate, but learn and be on top of, and kind of roll up my sleeves with the rest of the team and be a doer, which was I think important at the time. And we really just learned together. And but it always was a constant, I would say, catch up, but it was constantly evolving. We built, as I said, what they call business. Before we had one call center, before you know it, then we were building out another location, and we were just constantly evolving and adding people. And it became challenging at times, but again, we had built such a great core foundation, and that it really helped in our success.
Yeah. And not to like throw anybody under the bus, of course, but looking back, when you look
Mhm.
back at those years, is there anything that you would, now having known, do differently, or wish you would have known,
Mhm.
or whatever it may be? You looking back and go, man, I could have done better at this, or we could have done this. What is there anything, or?
No, 100%. And I think it's something that, I think that we're going to get into in a little while, is that, for us, right, in the lead generation world, right, unlike other businesses, right, you have contracts, we have agreements, we have MSAs, right, but not necessarily are these with some industries, you're signing 10-year agreements, 5-year agreements, right,
Yeah.
and you can scale your business. In the lead gen world, right, there's so many peaks and valleys that, and which we experienced. So, for instance, a company like ITT at the time, right, their scale was tremendous. So they'd come to us one month, increase, they would double and triple and quadruple their orders. And for us, because we did everything in house, right, we would scale to that. So we build more call centers, we had more agents. And what it ultimately ended up happening was we just had so much overhead to kind of handle the volume we had, that when if people know the education industry, right around 2010, 2011, the Department of Education came out with all of these crazy rules and regulations for for-profit education, and really changed the whole landscape. And for us, that was kind of a turning point for us, because at that time we just had so much infrastructure and so much overhead that it was a challenge now to handle the loss of business that we had. So I would say, if anything, I'm sure that, my partners in that business, we would all agree that if we knew better and we kind of had the insight, that we probably would have taken on so much internal overhead and thought about scaling in a different way, or outsourcing in a different way, so that in the event we had to downscale, we were able to do it more efficiently.
Yeah. It's funny. You sparked my memory too. Not just compliance issues and the regulatory issues that were coming down at EDU. There's also this like underground. I don't know if you felt it or you remember this. Maybe I'm making this up, but I remember being at a conference and somebody standing up, and he was worked at a school, I believe. Yes, and he said, calls are the issue with this industry, and they are the problem. It like transfers, and they're the issue causing quality issues. And there's like this anti-call thing going on in EDU. Am I making that up, or did you feel?
No, I think where the anti-call thing was when, and again, not throwing on the bus, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, when the offshore people got involved in the space, I think a lot of people who were fortunate enough, like us, to have infrastructure to build their own, call center or pay-per-call business, right? They outsourced to what they thought were good partners offshore. And unfortunately, which later years came to find out, was that there was a lot of fraud going on with these offshore partners, in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was a huge demise in that space, without a doubt. Again, we were fortunate enough that we controlled it all in house, so we did not have those challenges. But unfortunately, yeah, a lot of our partners, and I'll be honest, we when I started Prospects Digital, we kind of unfortunately got caught up in that a little bit with some bad partners. And schools find out, and they really don't care who the partner is. They care that that you screwed up, and caused them problems. And so yeah, so I would say that was a real issue, but it definitely was something for in the offshore world versus, I would say, U.S. based operations.
Yeah. So did you guys ever at College Bound? Then we'll move on to Prospect X as well. But did you guys ever transition more towards digital, like lead, just from straight lead sales, or what was the sort of percentage? Do you recall, of lead sales versus or calls?
No, so yeah, calls versus leads back for us when we were going strong. Sure, we were probably, I would say, 80% plus calls. We just had such an effective operation, and just did so well. And again, because it was internally controlled, it's what our partners wanted. We were just converting so well. I mean, we did have we had a network of sites as well. My Education and collegebound.net. That we did, but we really focused on the call world for us because we was just so successful at it.
So you move on from College Bound, right? And you go to Career Co.
So yes, so what happened was, because of the transition, we at the time, because we were 100% education based company, we had to kind of figure out and pivot, and we came up with something that was in a similar type of environment, which was the staffing industry.
Got it.
So, and we transitioned that into Career Co, and Career Co became more of a education and career based company, is where we did. So that was like the last few years is kind of Career Co. College Bound evolved into Career Co.
Okay, got it. And at that point, you took over or you became the chief operating officer of that new format.
Yeah. As we continue to evolve and grow, as I said, once our company really became more of an enterprise company, we had over 1,000 employees. I was, fortunate enough to transition to chief operating officer, and the last 4 or 5 years of the company is the role I played.
So going from somebody that sort of draw the short end of the stick, I guess, and became operations, or oversaw operations, to then becoming a chief operations officer of a company that has up to 1,000 employees. How did that position evolve? I mean, what was the chief operation officer doing at Career, like at that point in time in your career?
Yeah, so a lot of people say, what does a chief operating officer
Yeah.
do, right? So the goal of a chief operating officer, right, is really they call it the number two guy, right? So the goal is really to kind of sit under the CEO or the president, in this case Luciano, right, and have them focus on what they need to focus on, right, which is growing the company, right, being front forward, growing the company forward, and not worrying, getting bogged down with the day-to-day operations. So what my role was exactly that, was really overseeing day-to-day operations. Some companies, when you're small, you're actually the person handling it. In our case, we had departments. We had, 4 or 5 people in HR department, our finance department, technology. My goal was to work with those teams on a day-to-day basis, kind of work with them, handle day-to-day operations, work with them on any problems they had, work challenges they had, growth, and really just keep the CEO, in this case Luciano, keep him in the know of what he needed to know, right? As opposed to, instead of giving him a list of 10 things that he had to worry about, he only had to worry about 1 or 2. And that evolves into to most companies, whether you're a bakery, an HVAC company, or a lead gen company. It's that is my role, and my goal every day is to make sure that the operations of the company are working well, they're moving forward, everyone is working cohesively, and keeping the CEO, the president, really having him be able to focus on what he needs to focus on most, which is the vision and moving the company forward.
Yeah. And I want to dive into that a little bit more, but I think part of the story too would be incomplete if we didn't really talk about, you starting Prospect X with your partners. Um,
Yeah,
you guys, so at some point, decided to move on and start your own thing, right?
correct.
Okay. So how, just give me the how that was, and you and a couple partners, I'm guessing, or your own, you by yourself,
Yeah.
um, started this and said we can do this, and just tell me about that genesis of starting that company.
Yeah, so when it came time to kind of move on from career goal, because that kind of evolved into a different entity.
Yeah.
Myself and another industry veteran, also my best friend growing up, Joe Menino, if people might know him out there. We've always wanted to start our own thing, and we said now is the time. And I guess, again, fortunately, from all the learning experience that we had at College Bound, and the tremendous growth, especially for me from an operational perspective, I felt very comfortable being able to start and form our own company, right? Knowing all the steps that are involved in starting a company from scratch and growing it. It was a traditional, lead end company. The only difference we are at Prospects is we went into multiple verticals, so legal, home services, and education. We also had another industry veteran partner out there. And we all had different skill sets. So I think that was really what helped us have some early success, is that we all had our own lane, we all had our own expertise, and together, cohesively, we started the company and had some early success. We started by an acquisition of a company called universities.com, which was another small lead gen company out in your neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of catapulted us into the business. And, in taking from the playbook of College Bound, we also had our own call center, smaller. We had a 35-seat center, but, we did have our own call center operations as well.
What was it? So I usually think diversification across multiple verticals is a really good thing, because,
Mhm.
as being in this industry for a long enough period of time, each vertical generally has some type of ebb and flow with economic cycles or whatever it may be. Was that the right thing for you guys to do? What Just kind of curious, is that still a strategy you would recommend to make sure you're diversified, or does it make more sense to really focus on one vertical at a time?
You know what? I think for us, it was, for all the things you just said, right? Because you have different industries at different times, have different peaks and valleys. But at the same time, right, it's a challenge of learning multiple industries. Although the product is the product, knowing and understanding who the buyers are and the landscape, for instance, in the insurance, right? Understanding the Medicare space and the Medicaid space is important to understand that. It's hard to be a good lead generator if you don't understand your marketplace. That's why we started in education, even though education wasn't what it was at college bound. I think the times of years ago where one industry in the lead generation space has so much success that's all you need to focus on. Unless you come from that world, I know there's a lot of very, very good insurance lead gen people out there, but typically I believe most of them come from that world and really understand it. But I think if your core is marketing itself or lead generation and not a specific industry expert, I'm a very big proponent of the multiple industries because of being able to pivot when one industry might not be doing as well as another.
Yeah, for sure. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, but this industry it's got a lot of companies obviously in it, and I would say it's one of those those curves as far as the amount of employees that are in a company. So we've got a long tail of a lot of industries that are a lot of companies that are probably 3 to 10 maybe employees. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong too. This is like literally all just guessing a little bit, but small companies for the most part that make some of them make a lot of money and do quite well, and then others are struggling to continue to grow and scale and get to that next level, because generally we're this industry is full of entrepreneurs, like yourself and like that college bound team, but they're go-getters, they're starters, they're individuals that put their head down and just make stuff happen, right? Yes. And something that you touched on too, do everything, right? They do the sales, they do the payroll, they do the accounting, they do the marketing. Sometimes they do, they're doing some web design. They're doing it all, and that's why there's they're only maybe 3 or 4 employees at best, but they're doing it all. So they have a challenge of like really how to create an organization that can scale and build, to something more significant. What do you think some of those, challenges are from your point of view? So being a COO that's gone through that operational growth, and those challenges, what are some of those roadblocks that you find that those entrepreneurial CEOs or founders are struggling with?
I think the base, like you said, they're really doing everything right, but not everybody is good at everything, right? It's more of a necessity versus a want, right? So they'll do a little bit of, they'll pay their bills, they'll do a little bit of finance, right? They'll do this, but typically, a CEO or entrepreneur founder, right, are good at 1 or 2 really good things, right? In our case, people I've been around have been great salespeople, right? Have been great product developers, great marketers. Prospect Digital is a perfect example, right? We found a company, but even though we've been in the marketing space, I don't think any of us would say that we were expert marketers. And we brought in someone that we worked with for many years, and she was a very talented marketer. She knew how to run the marketing part of the business, and I think having her there was really added to our success versus us trying to do that. So I think that CEOs of today and of these small companies, the biggest challenges is that they're doing everything, handling all the business units, which kind of takes away from some of their focus, which is moving the company forward. And a lot of times they're missing a lot of pieces of the puzzle only because their skill sets are just not in financial technology marketing. It's just in something else.
Yeah, for sure. And right now, and I really why I wanted to bring you on talk is wanted to just talk shop a lot about the old days and college bound and all that sort of stuff. But you're obviously you're providing fractional CEO services right now to companies and helping them to sort of get through that scale those issues, or even if they're at scale, helping with some of those CEO type of services. Um, One of the things that I think of, at least from my own point of view, being someone that is like, a founder, that's a small team. There's only three of us, and how to scale is that challenge of, that next step, right? Sometimes that next step isn't quite clear on do you invest in this, or do you invest in these employees? How do you bring the full picture together to get to that next step and grow? And from a financial standpoint, it's expensive to hire sort of those executives to come in and do that. And that's generally, probably, at least in my mind, probably the first roadblock to get over as a founder, is go, okay, I'm going to spend this money to bring somebody in that can help me get to that point. I know I don't have all the tools to necessarily scale, and I do know I need someone with expertise, but I can't hire a $250,000 COO or CMO, whatever it may be.
Right.
So, I mean, tell me how what you're up to, and how you're sort of helping, bridge that gap for companies.
Yeah, so I learned about fractional leadership a few months ago. It's a newer buzzword that's starting to appear more and more frequently, and a lot of people say, well, fractional leadership is just a consultant, right? And it's not. It's dramatically different, right? So a consultant usually is a project-based person, right? They come in, they solve an issue for you, they solve a challenge. It could be a consultant that, you're looking for a new phone system. They'll come in and, they're experts in that one area, right? So they come in, they help you with that decision, they help you with that challenge you're having, and then they move on. The difference with fractional leadership, right? And I say leadership because it doesn't necessarily always apply to a fractional COO, right? There's, fractional CEOs, CTOs at Prospects Digital, and again, the term fractional wasn't even really used much, but we used fractional. We had a fractional CFO, so we were somebody that, basically acted as our CFO if we needed him to transitions. But, we paid him on a part-time. He was, part-time. He wasn't with us 40 hours a week. And we paid him at a scale that was very affordable to us versus bringing on a CFO. By the way, at the time, we probably didn't even need a full-time CFO. So a lot of it is not necessarily financial. It's a lot of times as companies grow, they don't necessarily have the need for a full-time CFO, CTO, CFO, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So, fractional leadership gives a company that is either a startup, like you said, growth, scaling, and some are in transition. I spoke to a guy the other day, owns a digital marketing company and working with dentists in the dental space. And, he's, kind of getting up there. He has his children are in the industry, but they're kind of younger, and he kind of wants to start transitioning out. And he's looking for someone to come in and kind of start replacing him to work with his children until they get to the place where they can run the company. Right. So, so what fractional leadership lets you do is bring in someone that has the expertise, that has a great, vetted team of resources that they have, right? And it's done very cost effectively because you're paying them on a part-time basis for them to, but they sit, they basically sit on your, next to your CEO or president. They're sitting on your executive team. They're present at meetings. They're present with your management. So they do work as if they are an employee of the company, which is, I think, which is a great help in the growth of the business.
So obviously every company is different. So this question I know could be, it depends. The answer could be depends. But what sort of, the low hanging fruit, so to speak, when you kind of start to look at a company and go, okay, where are sort of the issues that CEO or that founder has, I'm sure is your first go-to to figure out where you need to sort of focus on. but just generally speaking, are there normal or sort of low hanging issues that you always sort of expect to see and go, okay, we probably need to look at here this, sales and marketing or whatever it may be, or finances, accounting, to ensure our costs and budgets are in line, or is there anything
Yeah.
immediate that you generally usually see with companies?
Yeah, 100%. And it goes for every single company, right? First and foremost, it's financial management, right? So, unlike roles that a CFO will play, right, a COO is looking at the actual the operations management or the financial operations of the company, meaning, are you generating enough revenue? Are your cost of goods, right? Are you making enough profit to cover your overhead? I hear all the time, there are many small business owners and mid-sized business owners, and by the way, great ones that are very smart, very successful, but a lot of times they're not sure what their overhead is. They're not sure of how much money they're making on a month, and their profit margin, does it cover that overhead, right? And are they overspending in certain areas? So financial management is 100% the first place that I'll look. It's the first place that I'll get involved with, from their profit and loss statements to their accounts payable to their receivables. Do they have cash flow issues? Money companies, especially in our space, startup, right? It's a lot of people in data, right? We're prepaying for
Yeah.
services. In the call center space is a great example, right? Call centers, right? We're going out, we're buying the data up front, right? We're purchasing everything. Those agents need to be paid on a weekly basis, right? But by the time you deliver the leads and get paid by your clients, there's usually a pretty big span of 30, 45, sometimes 60 days on that payment process. So there's a cash flow, especially with a small company that's not well funded, right? And there's a lot of great financial tools out there that could help with that smaller companies aren't aware of. But again, as a fractional leader, you've been through that process. So you kind of understand that and can give that information and share that with them, the options that they have to do that. And the great part is that you're not, as a fractional, you're not peddling your own products, meaning you're not in it for financial advantages of it. You're fully transparent. So if it was a bank, or if it was a financial partner, I would bring them right to the table and have them work together. It wouldn't be me standing in front of that product and just looking to make a profit on that product. So kind of the trust factor then kind of opens up, and the transparency opens up. But financial management, number one. Sales is always number two. Is right. How do you sell? How do you get more salespeople? Right. How do you get that in there? And that's always a tough part of the world is sales. And then lastly is systems. Right. Are you using the right systems? Are you effectively using great third-party resources? And that's changing more and more. I'm actually have some great partners and some great friends in the industry right now that their team is based on virtual assistants, and that's come a long way in the business. And if I had that years ago, you're bringing on people that you're able to work with at a much more cost effectively as a startup before you have to bring on a full-time hire. And it's things like that, I think, that really can help a small and a mid-sized business that's growing, helping them with their overhead and keeping their costs low.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I imagine you probably help out with, or can help out with, even acquisitions or taking on finances, even though maybe that's more CFO. I'm not entirely sure, but with your experience, I'd imagine you'd be able to provide a lot of guidance with both of those types of ideas.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of times because the same gentleman last week in the conversation said, "Well, I need to hire a CFO now," and I explained to him that not necessarily you do. If you have a good bookkeeper, right? You have a good bookkeeper that understands, she's billing properly. She understands some of the basic principles of accounting. By the way, accounting was the worst subject matter I had during college, so I'm not going to be saying that. But you kind of learn. And then if you have a good operations person that understands financial management and understands how to read and analyze those reporting, not necessarily do you need a CFO at the time, a
Hmm.
fractional CFO, a good CPA. I think really rounds out a good finance team for a growing company. And then obviously there's points in time where you want to bring in. It took us years before College Bound had a CFO. I mean, we had a great team of bookkeepers, AP people, AR, but it probably wasn't until a year or so before we were getting ready to think about a possible sale at the time that we brought on a full-time CFO.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? They probably helped out a lot with that. Made
Mhm.
sure everything was all
Absolutely.
tidied up and ready to go for that sale. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, just more broadly speaking, just because you've had so much experience in this industry and seen um, industries come and go, frankly, especially in EDUs, with regulatory. And I think education is still lead gen is still occurring. I know there's schools still buying leads. I know
Mhm.
there's
Yeah,
still
absolutely.
a lot of people selling calls and leads in the education space. But you've seen sort of highs and lows of different verticals. When you look at the industry today, especially from a regulatory standpoint, there's been some pressure with from the FTC and others around lead gen. Um, just and then you don't have a crystal ball or anything, but
Yeah.
what would you say to business owners or lead gen or performance marketing companies that are relatively new, small, growing, making money now, probably pretty happy, but um, the future isn't necessarily crystal clear. Do you have any advice for those individuals?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is the more self-contained you can be as a company is important. I think that when you start relying on third parties, a lot of times is where you may get into trouble because you just don't know. Are they delivering you the right product? Is there some fraud behind the scenes? Is there something? Because ultimately, you're going to be left holding the bag, right, when you go to your clients. So I think self-contained, being as self-contained as you can, is important. And I think that. Not incurring back to we were talking about the overhead where I think it makes the difference, right, is looking at fractional help or outsourcing of help, right? So if you're building websites and you need content, right, you don't necessarily have to bring on a full-time content person and add to your overhead, right? I call them the non-revenue generating positions, right? Sales all day long, right? It's a revenue generating. A marketing specialist is going to be revenue generating, but where you're looking at more back office people, if you can look at some kind of virtual assistants, some kind of outsourcing until you're still building the company before you need to bring them over to kind of keep your overhead down is important. But staying self-contained as a company and trying to generate everything as much as you can internally so you're controlling the process. I've a big fan of there's a show out there, The Prophet, and
Yeah, for
he's
sure.
got it's my favorite show. He lives, it's people, process, and product. And I
Yeah.
will tell you that as an operator, I 100% believe in that. You need good people, you need a good product, and you need a good process. And if you have all three in place, your chances are you're going to be successful more of the time than less.
100%. That's really, really great advice. And I think it's probably appropriate to leave it at that because that was excellent. I've got some information on you here. I got your website here. If someone wants to touch base with you, obviously they can go to this website. Do you mind if I share your email as well?
No, not at all. That'd be great. Thank you.
Well, I'll put it up here as well. So yeah, if anybody wants to, pick your brain, interested in how you can help them, obviously they can shoot you an email. Is there any final words you want to leave us with before we sign off?
No, first I want to thank you for showing how old I am in this industry.
Hey, I
But
didn't see any years or anything like that. I'll try to stay away from that.
at least we're still a young industry. No, I just
I
want
didn't
to.
see you graduate. Your graduation year. 1945.
No, 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 I just want to, Mike, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for all you're doing for the industry. Your Lead Gen World and the shows you put on have just been, some of the best out there. And I've been to many over the years. And so what you're doing for the industry is great. And no, I just think it's, it's a great industry. I mean, I love being part of it. I think it's, as much as it keeps growing, it's still a very tight knit industry. And a lot of, some of my best friends have come from this industry. So, thank you for your time. And if anybody wants to reach out for me just to pick my brain or has any questions or anything about, how to help your company get to that next level, because it definitely is a challenge and probably keeps a lot of young CEOs and presidents up at night on how to try to just manage that. I'd be more than happy to share some of my experience. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for having me on. This was great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on, because I think it's, as we sort of touched on, there's so many companies sort of on that bubble that are smaller and don't know how to quite get to that next level. And your experience is, I don't think is unparalleled for the most part. I mean, that's why I really wanted to kind of get you on here to talk about it, because I think that there's so many companies in that position where not too sure what to do next, because they're doing so many other things. So I'm glad you were able to come on and share a little bit about that and just share what you're up to. And I appreciate you doing that. So we will leave it here. If anybody has anything for Mario, please reach out to him directly. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thanks, Mario.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.